Well, REinspired is a charity in its own right, working in early and East Reading, and we go into primary schools and secondary schools, and we deliver RE lessons and some assemblies as well. What's different about us from other projects that work in schools is we really focus on taking people from the pews into schools so that they can share their experience of being a Christian. The schools like coming out when they can arrange people to walk and do the health and safety things. They like going out into churches. It makes it a special visit. If we're in the hall in a school, well, we're not going to see a font and we're not going to see a communion table. And there aren't icons and imagery. There aren't going to be things on the wall that spark off the imagination and interest from the children.
Children go to free churches and into older kind of buildings across the denominations. So schools work is so important. Sessions that communicate like a living faith. It's really important for the kids in the sessions to connect with people who really believe in what they're talking about and can just bring it to life. So we try and do things really creatively and inspirationally through loads of different kinds of mediums, art, drama, storytelling. So we play God Jenga with them to start with. So we're playing a game and it's fun, but we're also kind of addressing their questions about where God is, who made God, is God going to die, will God go on forever, why did God create us, if we've all, if there's suffering in the world, why does he let that happen? Just loads and loads of different questions about God. The boy yesterday had a strong Muslim faith and he was obviously a really bright boy and he was really interested in what made Christianity unique. So we were saying what we connected with in our group was what we loved about the Christian faith was the idea of grace and it being unconditional. And he was really interested in that idea, and you could see him really kind of weighing up his own faith against what we were saying that we believed. And he just had question after question. It was great. We do a session called Death, Funerals and the Christian Response, which sounds like a really morbid, horrible session, but it's actually a really inspiring session that's full of life and encouragement, really. And we get the children to think about death, but also that being like a journey.
We deal with it in a way that is quite open in allowing children to think about a subject, that draws them into the subject and is very positive. We start off with a simple explanation of what happens at a funeral, what happens when someone actually dies. Just knowing that the body has stopped working and they're no longer in pain, if it was an illness, is a comfort to many children. But we're explaining that from the front, explaining what happens in a funeral, what a funeral's for. In the first session, they look at ways of remembering people. We look at obituaries from newspapers. We think about how children might want to be remembered themselves. The second explores grief, because children, as well as adults, grieve when changes happen. Death is a big change, but actually it's useful for them to think about other changes in their life. Maybe their parents have been going through divorce. Maybe they've been moving from one school to another. And so we do mind mapping techniques, just exploring the different feelings that they might have.
And we look at a story called Water Bugs and Dragonflies, which the children really connect with, and then they're able to make their own dragonflies at the end of it. And we look at the journey that water bugs make into dragonflies and about how there's bugs along the surface scurrying around, but then they don't understand what's happening to them when they turn into dragonflies, and then they're in this beautiful new environment and they can't go back to their friends to tell them what it's like, and they kind of connect in that sense that actually we don't understand what's beyond fully.
And we use that as an analogy for death and dying and heaven and not being able to go back. But it's really positive, saying that actually our life here is just part of a bigger journey.
I'm not sure what other subjects at primary school actually cover these things, so it gives the children a real opportunity to kind of be real if they have experienced loss. But it also is quite equipping for any kind of future loss they might experience, and that's been really impactful. I remember doing a session and feeling like, actually, I'm in this stage, and we've had a teacher actually really connect with that session and come up to us afterwards and talk about how they've realised they've been stuck in one of the stages of grief. Just recently, we had a session, what faith in action might look like, and we have different volunteers coming in who work in different areas. They might be doing social action, they might be missionaries abroad, they might work in schools, they might work for Faith, which is a local charity that delivers food to people and clothing and things like that. All different kinds of Christians doing things in the community. So they go around and explore those things. And one lady was talking about a village in Africa that she worked in where women adopted a real mothering role. And it really impacted one little boy who we'd worked with in a different context in a building self-esteem group that we'd seen him in. And he'd experienced a loss of his mum a year previous and had found it really, really difficult to talk about. Didn't really open up to any teachers, kind of. You knew that he'd experienced a loss, but you wouldn't know to talk to him because he wasn't very open about it. And he really just, something inside him connected with his loss, and he just broke down and was really emotional about it and really opened up. And it was brilliant because a couple of people who'd worked with him in this different context were able to spend some time with him and talk him through it and offer ongoing support for him. So it was a really amazing sense of, two things complementing each other. The REinspired lesson, connecting on a certain level, and then him and his own experience, and giving him an opportunity to almost express his grief that he hadn't done before. And the teachers were quite amazed as well.
We have all sorts of volunteers from across the 20 churches in Early and East Reading. And then we have ministers from several of the churches will come along. And they're particularly useful when we get onto a difficult question session where it's just an open mic that we take around and say, what questions would you like to ask a Christian? If you could ask any one question to a Christian, what would it be?
Anyone who's got a bit of life in them just wants to have an impact on children in school. It would be great if they could come and share their faith in that way, because we're always looking for volunteers. And for children, it has a real impact on them. They're connecting with people whose life is impacted by their faith.